In the legal world, there is a combination of forces that feed a corrupt and suffocating legal system for attorneys. Law schools, law professionals, judges, and even the firms themselves for whom you work create a system, a matrix, if you will, that is nothing like what you thought when you passed the bar exam. The purpose of this podcast is to help you escape this legal matrix, leading you out of the proverbial desert to be free of the bondage of the matrix. Hosted by Bryce D. Nyer, attorney at law with over 30 years experience in the trenches of civil and criminal litigation at the state, federal, and international levels. He's a highly accomplished and resourceful legal professional, a true master of his craft, and he's here to help you get your life back. Here's your host, Bryce D. Nyer.
Hello. It's Bryce D. Nyer coming at you from Fayetteville, North Carolina, home of Fort Bragg. We are here for another episode of Escape the Legal Matrix. So, how's everybody doing out there? We've got an interesting topic today, this evening, tomorrow, whatever time zone you're in. And we're going to talk about this thing called raising your right hand. We're going to talk about I know, it's going to sound maybe boring to you, but it's not to me, about the reality of having a constitution. Now, I'm talking about this time, the U.S. Constitution, for you law students, you lawyers, everybody out there in legal land, about what it really means. Most of the time when people talk about the Constitution, at first they seem to get a little bit bored. But the reality is everything that people protest about all the time that you see on TV, people looting, smashing, rioting, raising holy hell, has to do with constitutional law issues like the right to abortion, the right to arms, with the Second Amendment, gun control, all these sort of things. It's all about the constitutional rights. And what a lot of people don't understand is that when we talk about constitutional rights, the constitutional rights issues apply to governmental actions by government officials, state actors at state or federal level. It's not between private citizens. It's about stopping tyrannical actions from your federal and state government. And in reality, up to a certain point, when the Constitution was written and it was ratified by the initial 13 colonies, it only applied to the federal government actions, not the state action. That didn't occur until really after the ratification of the amendments after the United States Civil War, which made the constitutional guarantees applicable to the states. And a lot of people don't know that. But when you go back and you, look at this document, this U.S. Constitution, you really have to go back even further and read what is called the Federalist Papers, which were written by some of the founders of our country, which basically shows what they were thinking and goes into detail, the pros and the cons of what they were considering, in order to form this new nation, a better nation with rights for citizens, of what would ultimately become the United States of America. And it's just interesting because these men were just damn geniuses to be able to write and construct such a document and have discussions, especially in the 18th century, to have such foresight, to be able to look down the road in the future, which it's just unparalleled anywhere. Now, in reality, the Constitution has been cut and pasted. And what I mean by that, is that throughout the history of the United States since its formation, the Constitution should have been applied equally to everybody, but it was not. It was cut and pasted and favored for one group over another. And so as this country moved forward, the Constitution was constantly put to the test. It was almost stretched to the breaking points, which ultimately the issue of state rights came to a full head versus the federal government in 1861, and in particular in April of 1861, when the Confederacy commenced the American Civil War by bombing Fort Sumter. So, that was a huge constitutional crisis because at the time the southern states felt that the federal government was impinging upon them, especially with slavery, the slave trade, and basically taking away their free labor. And, we were a nation in crisis because on the one hand, our Constitution said that, all men are created equal, which, of course includes women. And that in reality, we were not practicing that across most of what was then the United States. We weren't. We were just hypocrites. We had documents, but we weren't really walking the talk. We weren't living it. And so this Constitution, this document that was framed and written in the 18th century, has been the linchpin, the stronghold, trying to hold this nation together, especially when the United States was first formed. 13 colonies in the 13 states, not a huge nation. And in reality, Great Britain just simply got tired of spending the money and the lives and the logistics coming all the way across the Atlantic Ocean to have to screw around with, these, the revolutionaries, the colonists. And they just got tired of it. So it was in reality, it was kind of a war of attrition. And many were surprised that the British just said, to hell with it, we're done, fine, form your own nation, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, we still relied on Great Britain. We still traded with them. We still did a lot of things with them. There's some other arguments that go along about that. And the issue is, were we ever really free from the crown? Were we ever truly ever free? And this Constitution, this thing that is, exists today, we've seen it challenged on so many fronts. And everybody seems to have this different interpretation of what it says or what it doesn't say. Some have gone so far as to say it's a living, breathing document. Well, it's not living and it's not breathing. It is a document. But as one of the former U.S. Supreme Court justices said, who's now dead, it says what it says and it says what it doesn't say. So it's that's kind of just a genius remark in and of itself. But as we've gone along throughout history, and as you law students, you lawyers, and people that even aren't in the legal profession, this whole thing about the U.S. Constitution is critical and it's key. Because everything that we do, that we're allowed to do or not allowed to do, kind of stems from the ability to keep the federal and state governments at bay. Because if we didn't have this Constitution in place, if it wasn't applicable, especially to the states, the federal and state government would have been so overhanded in their approach and their overreach, which has clearly happened time and time again by one of the three branches of government, that the Constitution has really been the only mechanism, the only vehicle, the only tip of the spear available to stop tyrannical rule. And I'm just amazed that this document is just still around today. And if you haven't read the full U.S. Constitution and the amendments to the United States Constitution, you need to do it. You need to read the Federalist Papers and just read the genius behind these men that crafted such a document. I mean, could you imagine just, it's the 1700s, the 18th century. You don't have air conditioning. You don't have central heat. And you're sitting there either in the summer where it's hot as hell, and man, they're wearing all them damn clothes. It'd drive me out of my mind. Or in the winter where the floors are just, if they were stone or wood, they were just freezing cold, had up the fireplaces, trying to work by candlelight, having quill pens and sitting there, maybe drinking, I guess you're going to beer or whatever they had back then, or wine, and just hammering out, this document, or writing the Federalist Papers and having these intellectual discussions and creating a new nation, creating something out of nothing, building. They were building. They were taking action. And it's just amazing. And many people today toss around, oh, it's my constitutional right this, it's my constitutional right that, and they don't have a damn clue about what the Constitution really says, how it's applied, and what the purpose of it is. And so for you law students, when you get sworn in most jurisdictions, you typically take an oath. You're affirmed, or you swear on the Bible or whatever your religion is, that you will support and defend, the U.S. Constitution. But in reality, how many lawyers really do that? How many judges are really doing that? Because to me, this is why I have my podcast, Escape the Legal Matrix, because the legal profession, the legal field has become this cesspool. And they've cut and pasted on a continual basis the application of the Constitution. And it's become such a multi-tiered legal system in the United States that, again, it's just still boggles the mind. And you're probably saying, well, why are we talking so much about the Constitution? Well, look, we just finished another presidential election. So this recording is going to kind of be dated here. So, we're just on the edge of 2025, and we just finished an election between now President-elect Trump and the current Vice President Harris. And of course, Trump has won the votes for the Electoral College, and of course they vote officially. Then it's certified by the President of the U.S. Senate. And you all along throughout this campaign and over the last, especially 10, 20 years, the U.S. Constitution has been probably one of the most litigated areas of law, reaching the highest levels to the U.S. Supreme Court. But here's the deal. If we as lawyers, jurists, those in the legal profession don't adhere to what the Constitution says, really adhere to it in total truth, then the paper it's written on becomes worthless. And for you law students and you new lawyers, you need to take this document seriously. You need to take it extremely seriously, because it is the linchpin. It is the key to the lock when you or your clients are facing tyrannical governmental action. And that was no more evident than what happened within the last couple of years with COVID-19. When the U.S. government, all governments across the world, but the U.S. Constitution applies to our government, federal and state. And the actions that were taken on the federal and state level were just so repugnant, so Orwellian in nature, that it took brave men and women, lawyers and non-lawyers, to assert the constitutional rights that were guaranteed to them. That it is the foundation of this great nation. And it never became more evident how important it was, really, until COVID hit. Now, everybody jumps on the abortion bandwagon. All of a sudden, the Constitution, constitutional right to this, constitutional right to that. But if it doesn't deal with one of their sensitive heart issues, then, the Constitution doesn't matter. So people pick and choose when to apply the Constitution, and they apply it only for their cause. But when somebody else has a right to assert it, and they differ from that opinion, they seek to shred it, to take whiteout to it, and just cross terms and conditions out of it, like they can do that. And so you law students and you young lawyers, I want you to go back and read the Constitution. I want you to go back and read the Federalist Papers, because at most law schools, constitutional law is a required course. It is a very important course, and it is typically on the bar exams in the summer or during the winter, depending upon when you take it. So again, go back, look at it, read it, and then look at yourself and say, what is my own Constitution? That's right, your own Constitution inside you, inside your heart. Where is your heart with all of this? So it's kind of a cool subject. I love constitutional law. I also love international law. But as time moves forward, I believe we are going to see a lot more in this arena of warfare, of litigation and against the lawfare and the oppressive legal matrix, as the legal matrix continues to try and be on the march and be oppressive and to take away the constitutional rights that were written in the 18th century that are still alive and well today and still have relevance and still have purpose. All right, this has been another episode of Escape the Legal Matrix, talking about the U.S. Constitution. May sound boring, but it's not, because it affects every single thing in your life. So this is Bryce Denier coming at you live from Fayetteville, North Carolina, home of Fort Bragg, where everyday men and women don the uniform and do what? They go out there and defend our nation so that we can enjoy the freedoms that are guaranteed to us under the U.S. Constitution. This is Bryce out.